Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to another Train the Trainer peer-to-peer support talk. I'm so excited because we are joined here today by a representative from Coahoma, and I would love for us to get into the conversation. But before we get into that, if this is your first time joining into this talk, and you're not sure what this is about, so we have selected 5 experienced cohort grantees that have been awarded the campus grant for another cycle to lead this mini-series. And in order to facilitate peer mentorship that resonates in real time, we wanted to bring in these experts or experienced grantees on board to provide us with an analysis of what works and what doesn't. They will each tackle their own individual campus observations and present them in a way that is tangible for other HBCUs to build upon. But before we dive into this discussion, I want to introduce myself and my guest. My name is Araba Aduapau. I'm currently the HBCU specialist at Ujima Inc., and I'm also joined here with Kenneth. So Kenneth, go ahead and tell us your full name, what you do, what your role, and what that looks like overseeing this campus grant.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Kenneth Gooden. I am the project director of Coahoma Community College's Interpersonal Violence Program, a small community college in the Mississippi Delta. And we have had the grant now since 2016. We provide prevention information on dating, domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. We also provide training too for members of our law enforcement and disciplinary or conduct board too as well in the area of interpersonal violence, being more effective on dealing with it. We make sure that we educate our students on mandatory education on dating and domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. And we've done that since 2016, but we are trying to improve every year. And so we're very grateful that we have the grant again on campus because it's much needed. Resources are limited here. So it provides a service that a lot of our campus community, quite frankly, are just not privy to.
That's awesome. Great. Yeah. So it sounds like you guys are doing a lot. And I know in our interactions with each other, we often hear about all of the great things that are going on in Coahoma. So I'm excited to hear your response to the next question. But we want to know, what has your experience been with campus programming? And have you been able to co-collaborate with any organizations?
Oh, wow. It has been unique and a learning experience. And what I mean by that is when we first got the grant, OVW made a point of saying, know your campus, know what goes on in your campus, know your campus community. So it was an experience for us to learn that. And our programming has, through the learning experience, kind of adjusted to what we have learned. We have tried to become more culturally specific. I guess the population here at Coahoma Community College is predominantly African American, but yet it's still inclusive to other marginalized groups too as well. So we've tried to make sure that we've been inclusive to a lot of different groups, but at the same point in time, understand who we're predominantly dealing with. So we tried to become more culturally specific. We tried to diversify our programming. One of the things that we've tried to, I guess what we've learned and we understood is that on campus, it looks as though the greater the diversity of your programming, the greater effect it'll have on students retaining information and them getting involved more in what we're trying to do here at Coahoma. If you try to kind of do things that are one set way, it doesn't work as well. Also, too, is we have to consider too the makeup of the people that attend Coahoma. And I talked about the population, being predominantly African American, but at the same point in time, we have a huge group of commuters that come here. They commute back and forth from home to school, so they're not predominantly here on campus. And even those who are on campus, they're kind of have their own different groups. So you have the dorm students that are predominantly active in the evening time when classes are out. You have our CTE students, which is our career technical education students, that we found out doesn't come to the union, they don't come to the union, excuse me, as much as other students. They don't maybe participate in other things that events that are scheduled here on campus. So we have to find a ways to reach those groups. We wanted to be diversified in how we approach those groups, which means that we held events with consultants or speakers that students can identify with. That's the culturally specific part. But also too as well, we also deal with not just diversifying, excuse me, the phone kind of thing now, but not just diversifying that, but also too as well, we also have to deal with the fact that the online portion has increased more than previously in the past. COVID-19 saw to that. After COVID-19 has come back, and I know we'll deal with that a little bit more, the makeup of the student population changed. And so we have to really kind of work on our online too as well. So what we try to do is, considering everything of what we've learned, is kind of do a mixture of both online and in-person programming. And hopefully, and we're working in the process of trying to work with our IT department here on campus, because what we would love to have is, even when we have in-person programming here on campus, how can we take that in-person programming and then turn it into online programming? So whatever we've done that was in-person event that we held, how can we turn that into something that we can do online so that they can click and have access to it, maybe click on a link and stuff. So that's a work in progress. We're working with that right now. But it would be great to have that nuance that we can use, that, okay, I was exposed to it at this in-person event. Now I can continue to go back and forth and get that information that I just saw. So because we noticed that you have to have an increased amount of dosage in order for them to retain it properly. So those are the things that we just kind of learned, and we've kind of connected with some people that have really been essential to us trying to reach our goals here on campus. People like Family Crisis Services out of Oxford, Mississippi. Also too as well, others too, such as Region 1 Mental Health. Those have been people that have really helped us as far as resources, providing information, working with us on the CCRT department to help us to get information out there, to craft things that are necessary to what we're trying to do. They have done a number of different things. So, and those people have actually increased from when we first got the grant to where we are now. We kind of saw that we had very limited resources here on campus. So now we try to increase the number of community partners that we have. And we have increased those community partners so that now the campus community can have access to resources that they didn't have previously.
Yeah. No, this is actually a perfect segue into our next question, but I like what you said in the beginning. You said, know your campus. Yeah. And know the populations that you are trying to speak to, and having to adapt to the changing culture. And I think that's a critical point that you just touched on, because the next question I was going to ask you is, what does outreach and engagement look like for you and on your campus? And I know just in personal conversations with you, you've mentioned, trying to reach the CTE population and so on and so forth. And so can you expand? I know you've kind of touched on it just now, but can you expand a little bit about what outreach and engagement has looked like for Coahoma, especially talking a little bit more about COVID-19 and how has that maybe derailed you in a sense, and how have you been able to kind of come back from any problems that or issues that COVID-19 has posed for your campus, and how do you plan to address this?
Wow, that's a good question. Even before I can kind of start speaking on what COVID-19 did here on campus, our outreach has been a work in progress to the point of what we're learning and how we can provide the specific needed outreach to our campus community. You mentioned our CTE, what we've learned from different people on campus, different groups on campus, with when we have found out that they don't really kind of go to a lot of the events that are events that we have scheduled for the campus community at large. We found those things out. So we decided to do more target groups or target programming that we deal specifically with certain groups. Now, in order for us to deal with groups, because the groups are diverse, means that you're probably going to deal with them during certain times of the day. There'll be opportunities that you'll have the opportunity to deal with them closer to lunchtime in the student union, when we see a lot of activity with students coming in, and or maybe in the evening time when you can deal with dorm students or different things, such as that. The CTE students, we are currently working to deal with them at their department, at their building of where they come in for primary education. So we are dealing with them, which means that we're going to have a relationship with people over those departments. So we've really been trying to reach out and establish those relationships. And I think we've done a pretty good job. There is still work to do. And it was kind of compounded, or I should say the work was kind of compounded by the fact that coming out of COVID, we had a number of new people on campus, either people retiring, moving on to other jobs, but there was a big turnover on campus. So now we had to work on reestablishing relationships. And it was a challenge, but it was a challenge that we're meeting. And so we're trying to do that too as well. We also have to deal with cultural norms that can affect outreach and different things that are going on campus. And I think I may have mentioned this to you before, but Coahoma had never had a formal organization for the LGBTQ community. They just didn't. And from engaging members who identified with that community, we found out it was because of cultural norms. I don't feel comfortable enough to be a part of an organization, to meet in an organization here on campus. That's what we found out. And so we just recently had an official organization that addressed the LGBTQ community here on campus. And so we reached out to them and talked about how we can work even more closely with them to not only address their concerns in regards to interpersonal violence, but that would also check the box off for a marginalized group that maybe in the past have not gotten the attention that it needed to get. And so we were able to do that too as well. But those groups, whether it be social norms, whether it be because of other things that are traditions on campus, for instance, I mentioned the CTE students or community students, you have to kind of diversify how your outreach looks and how you can meet students right where they are coming out of, and you mentioned COVID-19. So after COVID-19, we realize now that most of the students were moving to online classes. They felt more comfortable in that regard than coming on campus. So there are definitely less students on campus than there were prior to COVID-19. So we had to adjust to that, dealing with them online or dealing with them in a way that we get information out to them, which calls us to now say, okay, not just deal with different people who are over certain departments here, key stakeholders over certain departments here on campus, but now we have to deal with the instructors at large, because they play a key role in how information get out to students, especially online. You know, they can be very helpful in saying, listen, the interpersonal violence program has some vital information we want you to see. So if you can go and look online to get this information, it would be helpful. They play a huge role in that. And we kind of had to go down the line. You get in touch, first of all, you get in touch with the chair over the department. Once you get in touch with the chair over the department, then you reach out to the instructors. Once you've gotten permission from the chair to contact the instructors, then you reach out to the instructors and try to make your case to them. And so we were meeting with them. We talked about our don't cancel that class, which is an opportunity for, if they wanted to cancel a class, how we can reach the students, whether it would be in person or online. So we talked about working those things out. So it's an ever evolving outreach that we have to deal with an ever evolving and changing campus. The campus here, and I'm talking with you in September of 2022, the campus here at Coahoma Community College is not the campus it was 3 years ago. It is different. And so we're trying to adjust to that in many ways. And so we are trying to diversify the ways that we reach students, but at the same point in time, we're trying to establish newer and better relationships than we did in the previous grant, to be able to reach those underserved populations. So that's what we've kind of been doing so far. Good.
I love that. Yeah. So for this next question, I want you to be as honest as possible, because this is a space for learning, for growth, rooms of improvement as well. And so my question to you would be, what are some things you wish you knew before becoming a grantee, and how would you advise incoming grantees?
Wow. That is a very unique question. I would say that there was very few things that caught me off guard that I just never heard of and didn't know about. And I'm not taking credit for that. Actually, I give credit to OVW for that, because when we first started going to trainings and other things like that too as well, they were letting us know about different things that we would experience. And so they did a good job in that. But even with letting us know that, depending on your campus, you may not know to the degree in which you face it. Probably the thing that I wish I knew more than anything else was the eternal framework that's set up here at Coahoma Community College. So you're taught that you want to create as much buy-in as possible. And you create much buy-in as possible by getting key stakeholders involved with what you're trying to do with your program, and other people in departments, people in administration. You want to have not only administrators, but you want to have faculty and staff too as well. So you're taught those things. But within that, there is always a system or framework that's already set up on campus, even before you have gotten there. And so you're coming in trying to do your work, trying to meet the goals of your grant, and you kind of running into some resistance on campus from people who maybe have their own agenda. OVW was talking about how people work in silos, and I just give you an example. So if we wanted to get information out online, maybe on the institution's website or the social media platforms of the institution, we had to get certain things out to the communication department. and the communication department would get it out during a certain time. They have told us their policy. They want at least 2 weeks ahead of time, so they can get information out and different things like that. They want us to follow certain procedures and policies that they have to make sure that they have the correct information and follow protocols, so that we've contacted our supervisors. Our supervisors know what we're doing and agree with and try to get. So that's normal. That's normal. But there was almost a competitive side from different departments on campus, that wanted information out and felt that my information should be put over another department's information. So and maybe not a willingness sometimes to work like we needed to work for all of us to benefit. So if, there would be a certain department on campus that was very, let's say, very instrumental, very strong on campus. And we got together and we looked at the schedule and said, okay, we want to have an event on this date. And so we looked at the schedule. We didn't see anybody have that date. So we put in for that date. So we're putting in for this date and we're going to do this. And this is what we're planning for. And there would be times when we would run into resistance from these influential departments that basically claimed that date after we had gone in and tried to do that. And so we had to really work and still working on trying to be more intertwined with what we're doing with other departments here on campus. There's some that are just totally great. But I just didn't realize that I would run in kind of this resistance of what people were trying to do, because they want to make sure that theirs was being taken care of. Like, we're all hired to do a job. And because we're all hired to do a job, I want to make sure my job is being done. And so I didn't realize that the framework of what was already in place here on campus here at Coahoma, that I would have to deal with that and how it would have an impact on the things that we have done, trying to do with our program. And it's nothing and I'm not describing anything to you that's unique, because a lot of grantees run into that. But I think for the most part, they don't really know to the degree in which it is until they start trying to implement, their grant and different things like that. So it's a work in progress. And there are going to be times when you're going to really feel good about what you're doing and have people that you feel good about working with on campus. And then there are others too as well that maybe won't be as forthcoming with you or as cooperative with you, and you just have to deal with them. Sometimes you deal with them in a different way. We've learned to, if I'm having problems with one person in the department, let's see, can we establish a relationship with another person in that department? And so dealing with that and things with administration was something that I just wish I understood the magnitude of what was set up here at Coahoma prior to going into everything. So it was a learning experience, but we adapted. We are adapting. We still are adapting to it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, Kenneth, before, we talk about some of your biggest moments of pride on campus, because we're really interested in hearing a little bit about that. We wanted to speak to what frameworks have you used during the academic year in order to carry out and execute some of the initiative. So we know that like a lot of program objectives are dependent upon OVW standards, right? But we're specifically interested in learning about the frameworks you use to execute some of these initiatives, and how have you been intentional in your work to fulfill some of these grant goals?
Okay. That's a great question. I think one of the things that we've done and how we've tried to kind of frame things to accomplish those goals that OVW have set before, and then to deal with other goals that we have here on campus too as well, is we've tried our best to work with as many people, including community partners, to make sure that we were compliant on a number of things and have things set up so that we can be effective in what we're trying to do here on campus. So if we're trying to put our programming here on campus, how can we have a framework that works best for us here at Coahoma that's actually effective? And so we've worked with our community partners to try to devise a strategy for that. And that strategy looks a certain way. That's, first of all, that strategy today looks as different as though it was in 2017, 18. So it does look different. But the framework is, for the most part, it's, even though OVW has their set of goals and objectives that we're trying to meet to as well, we're also looking to at maybe what other people have done that's been successful, with them, and not just other people too as well. Other institutions that look similar to us. We're a community college, a rural community college here. Limited resources. I just explained to you what I was kind of dealing with as far as administration and other things are concerned. So how does other grantees that fall into similar categories, how are they set up to be effective in meeting the goals of what they have for OVW and the things that they have in place? What does that look like? So we've looked at other grantees. Sometimes, the best form of flattery is really kind of emulating what other people are doing. So when you see other people effective in some of the things that they're doing too as well, and you can kind of take some of the things that they're doing to add to your program to be effective, do it. And so we've done that. We've done that, whether that be just kind of setting up our CCRT in a way that works, is more efficient to getting those objectives done. When we first started out, we had these subgroups. So even though you had the main CCRT, you had the law enforcement subgroup, you had the conduct subgroup, we had the comprehensive prevention subgroup. So we had those groups within the big overall group. And that was good. That was good. And I would love to get that back. But just when things changed with COVID-19, some of that had to change because people's time became limited. The opportunity that you have to correspond with people that were on your CCRT, that changed because things changed for them. And so we kind of had to modify that a little bit. So we put a pause on the subgroup, and I hated to do it because it would seem as though that would be something that would not be, very good because because we thought it was effective, because we were getting an opportunity to get people within the group to meet and talk about how, as far as depending on what it is, whether it's law enforcement again or comprehensive prevention, about how they can be more effective. And that was good. But we had to put a pause on that. So we had to kind of change the framework of how we had those things set up too as well. And so now we have to do things where our framework is set up to include more people, first of all, to provide services here on campus. But even in going out and implementing things, to have things set up where particular groups who have been effective on the CCRT kind of take the lead. When we brought the dorm manager in, the head dorm manager that is over all the dorms, when she effectively became a member of the CCRT team, we saw a person that was a real hard worker for us, a person that got things done, and we became more effective in reaching those students, especially the dorm students, once she came on and became aboard and a part of what we're doing. So when we saw that and we took assessments of how that was working, so now she became an integral part of what we're doing. So we have things set up now so that when we address the dorms, this is how we do it. This is what we're doing. We're meeting with her, and she's a part of the game plan to help us do it too as well. So those really effective people that are part of our CCRT, they've always kind of taken the lead to help frame some of the things that we're doing and then implement the plan that we have in place. So they have really kind of been the ones that have done that too as well. And what we've done is, because they have been effective people that we can count on, now we're saying, okay, now how can we increase that? What does that look like to get other people to be involved, and how we can work on them getting involved? So we've tried to increase members of our CCRT that we didn't previously have. One of the things that we did, knowing through assessment, is that when we looked at that first grant cycle, we had a strong number of staff members that was on the CCRT, but we didn't have too many faculty members that were on the CCRT. And it's not because we didn't notice it or that we kind of dropped the ball on that regard. It's just we were having problems getting them involved in different ways. They would be involved and say, okay, I'll let you do this. I might let you do that. Okay, if you get the information to me in time enough, I'll make sure that I can even tell my class, hey, instead of we having class, we're going to go down to Whiteside Hall. We're going to go to the theater room. The interpersonal violence program has something going on. They would be instrumental in doing that. And that was great. That was really great. But we would love for them to be a part of the CCRT and what we're trying to do, because if they could be a part of the planning, it would help more with the implementation of things too as well. So we try to do that, to add more to that. So we try to add to our CCRT and at least do things that have been effective with us to enhance those things and talk about how we can do the things that have not been as effective.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Sounds good. Yeah. So Kenneth, I mean, I have truly enjoyed this conversation with you, and I know current and prospective grantees are also going to have a lot to take away, but we don't want to let you go without asking you this question. What has been your biggest moment of pride so far?
I think probably there's a couple of things I want to say. There's a couple of things. When we started the Don't Cancel the Class program, when we started that, it allowed us to get more into the classrooms here on campus. And what that did is that we started getting feedback that we don't normally get. And what I mean by that is when we have an event, we have ways of making sure that we kind of have information there, who was there and everything, because that's mandatory. You have to have that. We tried to have some assessments done about how effective it was, to know things that we had to work on. So we've done that too as well. But it wasn't until we were to break it down and have different things where we target different groups, such as classes when the teachers were out, that all of a sudden now we had students engaging like they never had before. I don't know whether if it's because we have an event that the entire campus could be a part of, that, they have a tendency not to speak out as much, or to just be in attendance and just kind of observe and not say too much. But when we started really getting in those classrooms, there were things that were coming out from students, questions being asked, not just questions, but things that are being said, where we had to refer them to other resources on campus because they felt comfortable enough to talk about it, which is great, which is what we were looking for. And to get that kind of conversation started, to get the kind of feedback that students were giving in those regards, I think that is important, because a lot of time we strategically look at things or goals that we can say, hey, Kenneth Gooden, project director of Coahoma Community College, look, OVW, I met this goal. I did this and I did that. And that's great, because you want to meet those goals, but not so much in ourselves feeling good about it, but when you can deal with something where the students get something out of it, where they felt like, oh man, I didn't know that before, or that was great. Can we do this again? Or can you have another session like this? When we started hearing that feedback, that was probably the things that touched me the most. Not the things to say we met this goal or that goal. We're grateful that we met those goals, but to hear that kind of feedback from the students, that meant everything to us. And just to also to as well working with members of our CCRT to try to create differences in our policies or make policy changes. And I fully admit to you, that has been a work in progress. There's still so much work to be done, but from 2016 to now, there have been some wins there. There have been some things that have been addressed when it comes to dating violence and domestic violence and sexual assault and stalking when it comes to policies. That's important. That's important for a different reason. Because even though I may have gotten a joy from seeing, engaging a student and seeing how they were excited or how they engaged back to what we were trying to do, that was great. But that policy change, which is why it's important and why we have to do so much work on it. When you deal with that, that lasts when the grant goes. Because it's on the books there in the institution long after that grant is left and can have an effect, which is what the grant wants to do, to bring some things into effect, to make changes on the campus. So that is important. So we've had small wins that we've had to feel good about, because even though we know there's so much more that needs to be done, it was a step in the right direction. And then to hear people who have been on campus for a while, I mean, for like 15, 20 years say, okay, now you might not have thought you did anything, but let me just tell you from being around, this is something that here doesn't happen that much. So guess what? You should feel pretty good about yourself. So now I'm like, okay, that's great. You know, that's great. So they were very minor, but we're working to make them bigger. So I would say those things that kind of touched on to kind of improve policy somewhat. But at the same point in time, the students engaging like they've done, those are the things. Yeah.
And listen, the small moments are just as great as the big. So thank you for touching on that as well. Well, Kenneth, we want to thank you once again for joining on this conversation. We know that the viewers will have so many great takeaways. And so we hope this was informative for current and prospective grantees. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.
Great. Thank you for having me a part of this. It's been wonderful. Just try to continue the good work.